Good morning. Here we are again with the wonderful Sally Estlin.
Hey Harry, I'm Sally. I'm down in Melbourne and I'm the Holistically Fit specialist.
And I'm the learning difficulty expert from Canberra. And today we're going to talk about the gut.
Yay! One of my favorite topics. I've been hanging for this one, Harry. Hanging. I love it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, Sally's pretty keen on the gut, as I am. So what would you like to tell us about the gut, Sally?
Well, it's all about the gut, Harry. Everything is all about the gut. It links into, it's such an important controlling part of our life. Well, not controlling, but it is actually. It's the basis of our living and well-being, actually about our well-being. And we've often thought, the brain-gut connection with, thoughts and feelings can affect our gut. But when you look into it in more depth, honestly, it's more about the gut and what it sends the messages up to our brain. Oh my goodness. It's, I think 70% of the immune system is held in our gut. Now our gut starts from our mouth. It goes all the way down our throat, all winding around and then ending out at the other end. And that is a long tract. And in our gut, there's loads and loads and loads and loads. There's trillions of bacteria. There's over 1,000 different sort of bacteria, which I think it weighs more than 2 kilos. It's heavier than your brain. That's a lot. Think of what interacts with the bacteria in our body and the effects from it. And the thing that causes so many issues, physical conditions, is stemming from the gut and from inflammation with the bacteria down there. So, yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I think it deserves so much more airplay, and people are really starting to understand a little bit more, starting from just, physical symptoms, bloating, discomfort, irritable bowel, all that sort of stuff. And now if you start peeling the layers off and getting down to what's actually causing that, it's coming down to the gut biome, which is the gut bacteria. So I could go on forever, but over to you, Harry.
Yeah, well, when I see clients and they have good days and bad days, particularly in children, one of the things I ask the parents to become is a detective. I empower them to become a detective and write down what the children have put in their mouths in the previous 36 hours. Because if the behaviour is really bad and there's no other reason for it, so there hasn't been, something happened at school, then we can usually put it down to what is put in the mouth. And that can cause bad behaviour if, say, we've got the two most common culprits are processed grains, gluten, and dairy. This doesn't affect everybody, but for the people it does affect. These products, they're proteins, and these proteins will get through the gut wall. They're not supposed to, and that's a process we call leaky gut.
I was about to say, yeah. So
because we get these partly digested proteins.
Yeah, that's more dairy and processed grains that cause that, the gluten.
Correct, and they will then circulate through the blood. They're not helpful. They're not digestible. So when they hit cells at the end of the circulation process, they then have to be metabolized. That takes energy. But more importantly, when they hit the second barrier, which is between the blood and the brain, they sometimes penetrate that.
Right.
If they penetrate that, then they will lodge in part of the brain. And these products are neurotoxic. So they're not food for the brain. They're the opposite. And when these products lodge in your brain, that part of your brain shuts down. So you lose IQ, you lose processing. And they then have to be metabolized in the same way as elsewhere in the body. And the metabolic byproducts are a natural opiate.
Right.
So think about the child who becomes really happy and engaging and animated and energetic, and then all of a sudden they get grumpy and their behavior gets worse, and that's because they're going through an opiate withdrawal.
Yeah, so the spikes and then the drops.
So you get the ups and downs in the behaviors, and that can be as simple as not being able to properly digest, bread or pasta or, some other processed carb. And it's because the lining in the gut wall, that long long chain you've talked about, that lining is too thin. It's been depopulated. So these...
And leaky gut, that's more and more common, along with the IBS and all that sort of stuff. Because when I've been researching into it, so many illnesses and chronic disease is linked to this gut. Now, I don't know all the technical part of it all, but depression, obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, MS, Parkinson's, the list goes on and on and on and on. So by addressing the gut, you can actually address these issues. And the one thing that I'm really passionate about is helping people prevent these illnesses down the track by looking into their gut now and looking into some better gut health. And
So one of the biggest red flags, if you like, that I look for is I ask every mum, how many antibiotics has your child had? A lot or a little or not so much? And then they say, oh, he's had a few, not too many. And they say, well, how many would that be? A dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, more? Because we've got different values about what a little is.
Yeah.
But 2 or 3 doses of antibiotic in a young child can disrupt the gut flora.
Totally. It wipes it out. It totally wipes it out. It's scary because, of course, kids, as they're developing their immune system, they're becoming, and this is the other issue, I know I'm diverting a little bit, but we're too clean a society, so we're not exposed to enough of these bacteria. So out of 1,000, we're not getting the full exposure to the different sorts that we've got. So eating dirt is really important for building up that. So, of course, that's leading back into kids being on more antibiotics because they're picking up more and more stuff, building up their immune system, and then it's whacked down with antibiotics, wiping out the bacteria that we're trying to build up. And it's scary. So, probiotics is something that we need to look into more in our diets as well. So probiotics are the foods that feed the prebiotic bacteria in the gut. Is that right? Something like that.
No, prebiotics are the fiber-rich natural foods that provide the food for the probiotics to proliferate and survive.
Right. Yeah.
And the being too clean is, that's around a hypothesis called a hygiene hypothesis.
Right.
And it's why, increasingly here, why kids get sicker sooner.
Yeah.
Because they haven't built up the resistance in their immunity.
Yeah, well, look at the kids in India with the Ganges rivers. I remember being over there and they can't even get a drop of water on you, or down the Nile or wherever it is. This dirty water. They're washing clothes in it, or kids are jumping in and out, and they're totally fine. It's just showing the different exposure and environments for the kids growing up.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So, it was.
So there's So I was just going to say, there are programs, there's lots of programs around to repair damaged guts. And my favourite one is called the 4R program from the Institute of Functional Medicine. And that 4-step process is you remove the things that you're not coping well with. We call them allergens. So if you're getting a bad reaction to wheat, then you would remove that wheat for a little while. And then you would replace some of the enzymes in the gut. You'd start repopulating it with good bacteria and probiotics and maybe prebiotics. So we're feeding the gut system that allows you to digest food, and then you repair the gut wall. So that's quite an intrusive program because if you change the food for one member of the family, you've usually got to change it for all.
Yeah.
So that's something you need commitment from the whole family, right?
Yeah. But that's not necessarily a bad thing that everyone does it. Sugar's got to be up there as one quite inflammatory because it's inflaming the gut, inflaming the brain, and sugar's got to be right up at the top there as one of the most inflammatory agents. I know you were mentioning gluten, which I'm up there with too, but sugar's got to play a part as well.
If you take a processed carb, say a white biscuit, a salada, whatever, something like that, break a bit off, put it on your tongue, leave it there, it'll turn sweet.
Of course, it breaks down to sugar. That's what the carbs are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's another thing that really affects the gut is chemical exposure and toxins. So the way that we might be eating fruit and veggies, but what's the source of the fruit and veggies? How much exposure have they had to sprays? I know in America it's scary, the wheat over there, sprayed so that it falls off easier to harvest, quicker to harvest, all that sort of stuff. So think of the toxins that are coming in with the relatively healthy food. Looking at the source of fruit and veggies is really important, and washing skins and peeling them and all that sort of stuff.
And think about the sprays that you use in your garden and around your home. And think about the products, the hormone disruptors that are embodied in your beauty products.
I was just
your sunscreens. Everybody's slapping sunscreens on kids these days.
Yep.
What's in the sunscreen?
Well, they actually had that in the news the other day about the dangers of sunscreen and what it's linking to these days, because the skin is the largest organ, and here we are putting toxic product onto your skin that's being absorbed in. It's like watering the garden with something toxic, and it's absorbed into the soil, and then everything that grows from that is exposed to it as well. And that's what we're doing to our bodies. So, our hair products, our face products, our skin products really have
absolutely
influence on what happens inside of us. And the more and more we can focus and talk about the gut, the more we can start looking better, thinking better, and feeling better overall, because it affects everything. It's a three-way circle. I'm big on the mind, body, and the gut, the three-way interaction there, because it's not one or the other. You've got to look at the whole lot. Big time. Big time.
But the gut being the biggest system is going to be the one that has the most influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, that gastrointestinal tract is huge, and it goes all the way from the beginning right through to the end. And there's lots of different factors playing in there. And as we age, our bodies aren't, metabolizing as efficiently and all these other things. So, I can understand why these illnesses then start exposing as you get older, as your body can't metabolize and fight, and your immune system's down and all that sort of stuff. So it's fighting a losing battle, if you like. So over long term, these things will start evolving, because if we're not looking after our gut enough now. Yeah.
And I see so many kids who, by about 10 o'clock, they've run out of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ask, what did you have for breakfast? And of course, they've had some horrible processed carb.
Yeah, cereal.
So fully metabolized by, 9:30.
Yeah.
So by 10, they're hitting a sugar low. They've had a sugar high. You set up these patterns in your children very early, and they're at risk. If they continue eating like that, they're at risk of pre-diabetes.
Yeah, it's
quite early on in their life.
That's a standard lunchbox or a standard school day for kids. Cereal in the morning, or maybe toast. Lunchtime will be a sandwich on bread with something, and most kids like their white bread, even without crust, whatever. And then dinner's okay, but it might have a dessert afterwards, a sugary dessert. So up, down, up, down, up, down. And you can understand moods and breakdowns at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Fermented foods are really good for the gut too. They're a very good source. So, I was looking.
What fermented foods do you eat?
Well, sauerkraut, but I became addicted, and you have to, and also you've got to look at the sodium content in that as well. So it's a bit salty. I like that, but because of my gut, I couldn't have things like tempeh. What's some of those other ones? Kombucha is another one, isn't it? Kefir. No, is it kefir?
The soy.
Yes.
Fermented soys.
Yeah, it was the soy that really stuffed up my gut. So, once again, listening to body, the more you get in tune with understanding how you feel after you eat certain foods. So like you were saying, what did the kids eat in that morning? The mums notice the behaviour. If we can do the same with understanding how we feel after we eat the food, and then we can start to become more in tune and go, oh, that didn't work for me. And that's how I originally got off bread. It's a number of years ago. I'm thinking, this bloating and tightness. It was awful. Took bread out and it was fine. I thought, so then I started taking gluten out and felt so much better.
So it's interesting. A lot of commercial breads have additives in which are not useful.
Yep.
Well, So if you made your own bread, you might like that. You might not feel bloated.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Because you make your own bread, don't you?
Always. Hardly ever bought bread in our life.
Yeah. It's once again, it's the source, isn't it? It's the quality of what you're putting in.
And it's interesting. Once you grind up flour, it starts oxidizing, within 20 minutes, half an hour. Yeah, you can get little grinders now, little desktop grinders that are quite compact, stone grinders.
Yeah. Is that what you've got at your place?
We have a big one because we bought it years ago, but that's a great thing. But you can source organic flour, particularly in Melbourne. There's lots of organic flour available. I mean, organic wheat, and you'd be amazed how the different wheats taste.
Yeah.
One year we sourced a red wheat, and the bread tasted quite different.
Wow! Actually,
there's lots of different wheats.
Because I love my thermos, and it makes really good bread in there, but I haven't made that for forever. But that's a really good idea. So I'm going to do that. That's my next this week. Alrighty. Well, we could talk about time. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So my bumper sticker for today is you are what you can absorb. And we must remember that Hippocrates said all those years ago, all diseases begin in the gut.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
So my 3 tips for today are read your labels.
A good one.
That's what you put in your mouth and on your skin. Read the labels. Yep. And if you don't understand them, look up what the numbers mean. Remove your processed food. And serve your family rainbow meals.
Absolutely, rainbow meals. The colours of the rainbow. Yeah, love that. They're good tips. They're really good tips. I've got 3 good tips today. Well, not as good as yours probably, but, reducing your inflammatory foods. So it's the same sort of thing like you said with processed foods, sugar, the gluten, all that sort of thing. The things that are causing tummy issues that you can actually feel, and try removing them out. Another one is what I mentioned before, avoiding chemical exposure and the toxins, and just becoming a bit more aware of where the food has come from and the quality of the food that you're eating. And the third one is another little favorite thing that I do with all of my clients, particularly over winter, is get into bone broth. I have my slow cooker going the whole way through winter, and it's so delicious. It's so good for you. It's got all the yummy stuff. It's so good for the gut. Gut loves bone broth. It's and it's easy to make, and it's yummy. Don't buy the crappy stuff in the packet that's got lots of rubbish in it. Homegrown is best, isn't it? It's great.
And you must have the best ingredients for bone broth.
Absolutely. Yep.
So organic is important.
Yep. Because otherwise you're just cooking up lots of more toxins to throw into your system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Harry, today it's been absolutely divine talking to you about the gut. It's my favourite subject. Love it. And I'm sure we might talk some more about it next week. I think that would
be good on you.
Well, go and have a beautiful day. And, I'm going to source some good quality wheat and try and make my own bread.
Awesome. Look.
Awesome, baby. All righty, we'll chat to you next week. See ya.
Bye then.
Bye.